Welcome to a new Team CGC 9.8 video. In today's video I wanted to talk about some of these slight differences in CGC 9.8 issues because, over the past year or two I've been lucky enough to buy kind of doubles and even triples in some of my favorite issues, and when you're around CGC 9.8 books a lot, you start to notice some of the slight differences. And one of the things to just kind of say right off the bat is CGC 9.8 comics are not perfect. I know a lot of people think because CGC 9.8s are kind of the highest grade you can expect to buy, that they're going to get a perfect comic. It's just going to come and it's going to be absolutely perfect. And sometimes you can get let down because there are some little quirks to each comic, and a lot of it has to do with the coloring, the centering, and a couple other things depending on the issue. So we'll get into some of the details here. I have 3 Incredible Hulk 340s here. And this is a good issue to go over some of those slight differences because it's got this signature on the side, and it's a really small detail, but for this issue specifically, centering is really important. So we'll talk about coloring, we'll talk about centering and all that. Just really quickly want to look at Incredible Hulk 340 on the CGC census, because this is a book that I totally recommend. Obviously I have 3. Really recommend it as an investment grade book. Certainly if you're a Todd McFarlane fan, and it's kind of, I've said this in videos in the past, it's a bit of an affordable way to play Incredible Hulk 181, which has completely taken off. First Wolverine, obviously, when Wolverine and Hulk fight as well for the first time. This is the second time Wolverine and Hulk fight in history, so it is kind of, in that way it's somewhat of a key issue, but you are kind of riding the coattails of Incredible Hulk 181, essentially, with this issue. Kind of a more affordable way to play that. But let's look on the census here. There's 652 CGC 9.8s in Incredible Hulk 340, and 14.3% of all Incredible Hulk 340s are CGC 9.8. All graded Incredible Hulk 340s, 14.3% of them are CGC 9.8. And for an 80s book of this time, that's actually a pretty favorable ratio. Anything under 20, you're looking, pretty rare. Anything under 10 is really rare, like an Amazing Spider-Man 300. The reason why that's so expensive is that CGC 9.8 ratio is 6%. So this is 14.3%, which is still pretty rare. Because, Amazing Spider-Man 300, that's like a one-off rare, really rare book from the 80s. Okay, I want to look into some of these details, though. Okay, so these 2 books here, they're really, I think, high-grade CGC 9.8 issues. Sort of in the higher echelon of CGC 9.8s. Whereas this one, I think, is probably a lower grade CGC 9.8. So let's kind of get into those issues. This one here has the best color. So I don't know if you can see that on camera. This issue has the best color by far. But it's not perfectly centered. So let me just hold this up. Hopefully you can get a good look at it. Best color on this issue. However, if you notice, just on the side here, you notice like the McFarlane signature is kind of around the spine. So just a tad off-centered for this issue. And when you check the back cover, you see a little strip of the front cover on the back, like just the slightest of strips. Still, even the back cover, you could tell that the color on this issue is absolutely vivid. So yeah, I mean, this was probably one of the first off the printing press, or when they kind of fixed the ink and everything. This might have been the first one off the printing press when they put new ink on it. Because the colors are great on this one. So I mean, the main 2 things are going to be color and centering. So I'll hold this one up to see if you can see a little bit of dimmer color. Very slight, somewhat dimmer color. However, if you notice on this one, you see the McFarlane signature perfect. And this book was, I believe it was $437, I think it was. And generally this book will go for about $400. If there's a few centering issues or this and that, a few quirks to the book, go for about $400. This one I bought this for $437. I knew I probably had to overbid because it was just really centered with the, with the signatures very prominent and not kind of curling around the spine on this book. And that'll make this book, $30-40 more than, I would say a normal CGC 9.8, let's call it. yeah, so Incredible Hulk 340, it's a little bit more important that it's really centered, I would say. So it'll go for a little bit more money. But yeah, this one, not as vivid colors as this book, but still very nicely centered. And even this book, you know, it's still pretty decently centered. I mean, if the McFarlane signature wasn't there, you wouldn't even really know that it was a bit off-centered. Yeah, this one's probably my best one as far as just centering color. Whereas this one, perfectly centered, but colors a little bit dimmer, especially when you put them kind of side to side, and hopefully that's sort of coming in on the camera. So 340, this one. This was the first Hulk 340 I had purchased, and I bought it as just a straight buy it now for $3.99, and that's, you know, pretty fair price for this book. But when I got it in, I was a little, you know, because this was one of the more earlier CGC 9.8s I got, I kind of had that feeling like, oh, okay, I'm buying a CGC 9.8, so it's going to be perfect. But yeah, so if you notice on this one, you see some of the pages on the top. And yeah, a little bit of page coming out of the side as well. For me, that's probably one of my biggest, you know, things that I don't like about CGC 9.8s. Sometimes I'll pass on CGC 9.8s if there's like pages coming out of the top or the side, because it just looks a little bit too off-centered when you're showing. When you're showing them to someone, it looks a little bit off-centered. Whereas if you don't have pages coming out the side or the top, they really, like, to the untrained eye, they look absolutely perfect almost. But with the pages coming out the top, to the untrained eye, they actually, oh, like, it looks a little weird with these pages here. So that's probably my biggest annoyance of CGC 9.8 books. I don't mind a little bit of off-centered. I don't mind a little bit even a color dim at times. But yeah, to have sort of the pages flopping out of the side and the top, is probably my biggest annoyance with CGC 9.8 books. So yeah, really those are kind of the three things to remember. You know, color, sort of spine centering, and then the pages sticking out the side. Those are going to be sort of the three things that, you know, CGC 9.8 books may differ in price, even though they're the exact same issue kind of thing. I guess we could talk too a little bit about the CGC case. Because, you know, every now and then it's really important to take care of the cases because, you know, if you get a kind of a prominent scratch, it's quite hard to sell CGC 9.8s really fast because, you know, you can imagine CGC 9.8 collectors are probably pretty, you know, anal and you know, very specific about the books they want. So any scratches on the case could be problematic. So yeah, make sure you kind of buy good bags and take care of your cases too. These cases are all really flawless, all new cases for these three Hulk 340s. Yeah, so you know what? Yeah, so this one purchased as a buy it now, and it was kind of a, you know, where I was earlier on collecting, and I saw a bunch of 340s online, and this was kind of the cheapest one, and it was in Canada too, so, you know, and it ended up being, you know, a pretty decent price. $3.99 as a buy it now is pretty decent because in auctions, weekly auctions, you see these go for, you know, $3.90, $4.05, $4.07, you know, and the one that I bought perfectly centered was $4.37 on an auction too, so not even a buy it now. So $3.99 on a buy it now, I thought that was a pretty good deal, but it is a little bit off centered, so I could see how probably some seasoned collectors at that time would have maybe waited for a better kind of a more centered issue. But yeah, you know what? The more I do collect books, and it's still an absolutely perfect issue. I don't know if this is a manufacturing defect to have the pages, you know, kind of popping out the top here. With color, you know, it's pretty tough because is it a manufacturing defect with the color, like not the printer, the ink being in the printer enough, or is it, you know, somebody might have left it out in the sun, or, you know, didn't keep their comics in the dark or something like that, and then they started to fade. So color's a little bit harder to sort of know if it's a manufacturing defect. But essentially, I think a lot of the times with centering and with pages popping out the top or the side, that's pretty much a manufacturing defect. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a CGC 9.8, I think, if, like, you know, the inner sort of book kind of shifted or something to, like, bring the pages out of the top or the side of the cover. So, yeah, you know what? Anything that's, the more I collect and the more I have CGC 9.8s, anything that is sort of a manufacturing defect, I don't really pay too much attention to. Again, my biggest peeve is probably the pages popping up the top of the side. But yeah, coloring and centering are the other two things you want to look out for. But yeah, slight differences in CGC 9.8. It's important to kind of wrap your head around that, I think, if you're getting into buying CGC 9.8 books, because all of them, they're not just like perfect comics. You're not just like, you can't just expect to, you know, see a CGC 9.8 listing on eBay and just buy it without looking at the pictures or something because you think it's going to be perfect. Like, don't do that. You know, you want to look at the pictures, you know, check out the centering, check out the coloring, check out the pages popping out the sides, and that's pretty, and then, you know, make sure the CGC case is in a really good shape. And yeah, I think if you do that, you're going to get sort of the upper echelon of CGC 9.8s. And, you know, again, even if you can get a really good deal on one that might have some off-centering or whatever, I think that's fine, a really good way to go to. So I want to just mention my other issues that I have doubles of, because this is the only CGC 9.8 I have triples of. Probably one of my favorite issues of all time. And I know the last one I just bought was this one, the perfectly centered one. So when I saw that on an auction, I was like, oh god, this is going to be really hard for me not to buy. And I ended up buying it, perfectly centered one. This one, best colors, almost perfectly centered. And this one, a little bit off on the color, a little bit off on the centering, some pages out at the top, but super white, crisp pages on this one, though. Like, this is definitely a 9.8. It's a really good example of, you know, a 9.8 with some centering and pages issues, but still, the pages themselves are just so crisp and white. I mean, it definitely is a CGC 9.8. So my other doubles books, and I'll just list them out because then you'll kind of know what books I really, really like, because if I bought two of them, that just means that I really think they're good investment grade books and really, you know, awesome books, just either personally or investment wise. So Batman 423, I have two of those in the CGC 9.8, Todd McFarlane cover, Batman, pretty rare in the CGC 9.8. Similar price to Hulk 342 for Batman 423, so, you know, $350 to $400, sometimes a little bit more, again, depending on the centering. My Batman 423s, I have one that's really vivid colors. They're both perfectly centered, actually, but one really vivid color. They were both pretty expensive, but second issue that I have two of is Batman 366. This is that Joker cover. It's where Jason Todd first becomes Robin, and plus it's got a cool Joker appearance, cool Joker cover with Walt Simonson Joker cover, so classic artist. And yeah, Batman 366 is one of the cool. It's kind of I would say it's a bit of a love-or-hate cover. Some people kind of hate sort of the Batman in the lights on the building. I really love it. Plus, I really love Joker has the dually wieldy handguns on the cover too. I really love that. So Batman 366, two of those in the CGC 9.8. Silver Surfer 44, one I unboxed. I got my second one in a couple weeks ago. First Infinity Gauntlet. That issue too, one is kind of perfectly centered with dimming colors, and the other one has amazing colors but a little bit off-centered and kind of has some of the front cover on the back of the spine, on the back cover spine, similar to this, how I showed you on that. But yeah, still a good, but my second Silver Surfer 44 I got for $155, I think it was, and I think that's a really good price. If you can get First Infinity Gauntlet for about $150, I would take a stab at that in the CGC 9.8. Amazing Spider-Man 361, First Carnage, got two of those. One in the newsstand, one in the direct version. The direct is perfect. I thought it would possibly even be a 9.9. Perfectly centered, perfect color. Especially when you put this 9.8 newsstand beside it, you get the color on my direct version is absolutely vivid, 100%, and it's well centered. It's pretty much a perfect 361. And then, yeah, the newsstand, a little bit less on the color. You can tell when you put them side by side, it's a little bit dimmer, but a perfect issue, you know, perfect as far as spine ticks. And that's the thing about, you know, CGC 9.8s. I'll talk about spine ticks and everything for really quick. Yeah, ticks on the spine and stuff. Every now and then you might see like one or two micro ticks, like if you put it against the light, a spine or two tick. But for the most part, you're never going to get any like really noticeable spine ticks, and the corners are going to be pretty sharp. Every now and then on like an older book, you might have one corner that's a tad fuzz, but it's still sharp, essentially, like just maybe a little fuzzy. But yeah, that's what with CGC 9.8s, you can kind of expect that to be, there not to be any damage as far as like major spine ticks and corners being fuzzy and things like that. But yeah, coloring and centering though, you can't really expect them to be perfect on the CGC 9.8. So just so you know that. And the last issue I have two of is the Batman Beyond #1 in the first print. Yeah, probably one of my favorite like modern issues. You know, came out in '99, I think it was. Yeah, Batman Beyond #1. First Terry McGinnis, first Batman Beyond in the first print. Got two of those. They pretty much look the same. They're, I think one has kind of a lot of Newton rings. The other ones is quite clean. They look about the same though as far as the book. And Newton rings, I'll just quickly mention. You know, like they did sort of annoy me at the beginning, but at this point, I don't even care about them pretty much. You know, not a part of the book. You know, you just get these glossy, colory rings sort of sometimes on the page or from the CGC encapsule. Yeah, I've totally just learned to kind of ignore them. Not a part of the book, so just a little bit annoying when you first look at it. But once you kind of gather a lot of CGC comics, you don't look at them that much, and you just more focus on the book. And yeah, again, centering, coloring, pages coming out the side. Make sure your CGC case is in really good shape as well. And yeah, you should be good. And you know, this video is mostly just about getting that message across that when you buy a CGC 9.8, you know, still look at the pictures and still check it out, and you know, don't expect that it's going to be absolutely perfect because it's the CGC 9.8 and they're really expensive. No, like you still got some of them are still off-center, dim in color, so you still want to be a little picky. I always recommend, especially with like books where there's a lot of CGC 9.8s, like Amazing Spider-Man 361, First Carnage, or First Deadpool even. There's a lot of CGC 9.8s in those books, so you could be really picky on like centering and colors on those type of books. But yeah, again, if you find a deal and the issue maybe isn't perfectly centered, I think that's still pretty cool too, because you know, all comic books have their quirks, just like people and stuff, and it's not the worst thing in the world. So okay, I think that's it for today. You know, just thought it was a really good idea to do a video like this, and someone mentioned it in the comments. Yeah, I believe it was Goat something is their name, mentioned to do kind of slight differences in CGC 9.8 as a video. So thanks to them, and yeah, something I wrote down at that time, and I really wanted to do a video like this. So thank you very much for watching. If you haven't already joined the team, please join the team and subscribe to Team CGC 9.8 here. But that'll be all for this video, and I'll see you on the next one.